forced to grow through it. Okay. Now microclimate varies over short distances. Now I am lucky enough to be living there. That's where my house is. Now this is, we were lucky, there was 4 of us with an interest in permaculture 14, 15 years ago, bought this farm. And we were blessed because no one local, it was on the market for 4 years. No farmer wanted it because you can see it's very, very rocky. And so we managed to get it at the time. We were very lucky. But what most farmers were looking at, there was very few grazing on it. There was no access for tractors. So for conventional agriculture, it was no use. But for people who were interested in small-scale gardening and permaculture, it was an absolute haven. And for us, the big benefit was, you can see it there very vividly, it's a south-facing slope and it catches all the sunshine. Down in the bottom here, in the bottom of the River Lee Valley, there's a mountain coming up on this side, so in the winter time there's no sun on that side of the valley. So the houses and the gardens which are located there, for 4 months of the year they have no sunshine. And we up on the hill have got sunshine all year round. Now you say, okay, but that's 10 degrees, always 10 degrees every single day of a difference in the temperature. And if you're talking about heating a house, that's a huge amount of extra heat that you've got to get from some other means. So microclimate can change dramatically in a short distance. Even within our own farm, there are hundreds of different pockets with all sorts of different attributes. Now I'm just going to go through a series of just small examples. Now there are hundreds of examples of people I know. Jen has done lots of people here have done different things on their projects and changed the microclimates and turned what most people consider a piece of wasteland into something that's very, very productive. Now this is just my neighbour Vicky, just a simple project which she did over a weekend. She had a small little field with very, very thin soil on it. So what we did was we dug out a small pond. It was only quite a small pond, that one. And then we shifted the topsoil was all taken away to the north side, so instead of her having that amount of soil to garden in, she now has that amount of soil to garden in. So what it's done is it's concentrated the soil in a particular area. Some of the topsoil went to the south for a hedge which has grown up. Right, old saying, no fertiliser like a farmer's boot. And our particular farm, there was very, very bad access around, it was very, very difficult to get around. So one of the advantages of doing ponds is that you also get a supply of clay. Now the clay can be used for, in this case, path building. There was a very, very squidgy path there which my donkeys wouldn't even wouldn't walk on because it would sink to here in the muck. And just by putting clay down over Mypex, it's like coal sacks, that's what Mypex is, it solidifies then and grasses over and there's a solid path forever really. And access allows you to get in there. Now this is where my garden was. It had a very high water table. Anytime it would rain, you'd be squishing through water up to about here. And for years I was thinking, okay, raised beds. So I started my raised beds. Of course, the slugs ate the whole lot and it looked horrible. It was absolutely awful. And previous farmers had made many attempts to drain it. It was originally sort of a very swampy bottom. So sometime 500 years ago, somebody came in and took out all the willows and alders, whatever was there, and dug those lovely old little stone drains and tried to bring it back. Of course, that failed. The farmer before us came in and tried the same thing with different piping and more stone. That failed. And I wasn't going to go and try and do that again because if you've been trying 500 years and it hasn't worked, there's got to be something else. So I finally decided I was going to dig out a pond in it. And when I dug out the pond, that gave me, now this is the exact same perspective. So the pond has been dug out. It's very raw there because that was only a couple of years old. I now have 1/3 of an acre, say, of water, and the rest of my garden has been raised up. So with the 3 feet of peaty material that came out of it. I also got a lot of clay and stone, and was able to plant a lot of fruit trees and garden around. Another, there is, again, the top picture is what my garden, the area where I've put my polytunnel looked like. It was just rushes and briar. A farmer came along to me and he says, that's good for nothing but giving liver fluke to sheep, he says, you know. And that's what it was, you know, it wasn't much used for growing. So the first phase was here, where about 6 feet of the soil was raised up by about 6 feet. So I now have 6 feet of soil on my polytunnel underneath it. So even if I trashed it and really abused it, it would take a long time for me to totally ruin that piece of ground. And my first thing to do was I put up a few of the hoops just to see what the polytunnel would look like in the landscape. And that's it after 4 years later. Polytunnel up properly. One of the things with the material which came out of the pond, it was very, very peaty. So I dug through about 15 tons of sand. I found the best way to introduce sand into it was to, when you plant your potatoes, earth up with sand. So then when you're digging your potatoes, you're mixing the sand through the soil. Do 2 jobs at once. I also put a lot of lime. I put in different types of fungi and bacteria, because the material which comes out of the pond is anaerobic. There's very little bacteria in it, so you need to change it around and add aerobic bacteria into it. Lots of seaweed, a lot of love, and it now grows anything that I basically try to grow grows. For my neighbour Fred, another one. Again, he had, this is about 1/3 of an acre of a wet slopey field going all the way down the hill. And the previous farmer had tried to improve it and failed, and it had reverted back to briars and rush. So one of the things that permaculture teaches us to do is to put in keyline ponds, which is a long, narrow pond along the horizontal, and halfway on a slope, because what that does is will pick up all the springs which are flowing down the hill, gather the water into one place, and you can then focus that water anywhere you go. Obviously, as part of the pond building, you get the topsoil and you get clay, so that gave him planting space for a lot more trees and gardening area. Sorry?
About a minute or two.
A minute ago, oh my God, it's very close to the end now. There we are, we're at the end, right? So what I'm trying to say about marginal lands is, all the building blocks are there for a very fertile garden and very, very fertile landscape. It just needs to be rejigged and reorganised, and a little bit of thought, a little bit of love, and some big tools do help an awful lot. You should be a long time digging that by hand. Okay, that's all I have.
And you never shared your answer to slugs.
Oh, slugs, right. I'll do the slugs thing. A couple of things helps with slugs. One of the best things I do with my garden is I have raised beds, but what I do is I put planks of wood down just to walk on, so you're not compressing it, you know, the no-dig garden thing. And if you want to do your slugging during the daytime, all you do is you just flip over those bits of wood, all your slugs will be underneath those. So that's slugging during the daytime. And the other tip is slugs love weakened plants, sugary plants. That's why they love your transplants. When you put them out and they're there and they're a little bit weak, you know, a little bit yellow, it's like Haagen-Dazs chocolate ice cream for slugs, you know, they just go straight for them. So the thing is, give them something nice to eat instead of your transplants. So what I do is, I take some leaves of comfrey or some yellowing leaves of cabbage and rub them between my hands until your hands are going green. And then I put them down a bowl every few meters. And if you put that down today, you come out there tomorrow night, all the slugs will be feeding on that tiny little ball that you put down, and they'll be ignoring your transplants and other plants which are around them. If you're a bit squeamish about slugging, you can just pick the whole thing up, right? Or you can just keep renewing them every 2 or 3 days, and your plants will grow away without them. It works. Okay? That's my question.